Behind me is the old Ellicott City Jail where Jacob Henson was lynched on May 28, 1895. The lynching was written about in the Ellicott City paper and documented many times by the Baltimore Sun. Reports say Henson got into an argument with his boss, who struck him in the chest. According to the Maryland Archives, Henson picked up a hatchet and hit his boss, Daniel Shea, in the head multiple times, causing Shea to collapse in the corner of the room, after which Henson fled. Henson was convicted and sentenced to hang. His lawyer tried to argue that his client was of unsound mind, but fearing he would get off, an angry white mob took matters into their own hands. Joy Owens, a descendant of Henson, explains what happened in an interview with WBAL TV 11 News.
So they went into the jail at night and took him out and hung him.
4 days before Christmas in 1906, another black man was lynched. 17-year-old Henry Davis was accused of assaulting a white woman. Once again, another angry mob seized Davis from his jail cell, this time on Calvert Street in Annapolis. They paraded him along Clay Street and down Northwest Avenue, terrorizing the black neighborhood through which he was tortured along the way and inviting whites to join in. The mob then shot him multiple times and hanged him from a tree along this very creek. A photographer took pictures of his mutilated body, printed them up as postcards, and sold them in town at 2 for a quarter. Henson and Davis's lynchings were common racial killings that terrorized black communities from the Civil War era throughout the mid-20th century. Will Schwartz is the founder of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, which documents racial terror lynchings in the state. He says that although some of these events happened over a century ago, they are still relevant today.
Well, I think there's a direct line between racial terror lynchings that happened, as long as 200 years ago, and our life today. I think it's, what unites them is white supremacy, right? It's the disease, it's the virus, that's the through story, and there's an assumption of impunity that would have allowed people in the 19th century to think that it was an acceptable thing to do, with cops today who think it's okay to shoot black people in the back. That's all a reflection of the same disease, as far as I'm concerned. And we have that part of it. We have the criminal part of it, the murders. But there are other ways that we see the legacy of lynching today, and it's in a reflection of the greater cloud of racism that permeates our lives, that permeates our society. We just had an election. We know that in Atlanta alone, in black voting districts, it took people 45 minutes longer to vote than in white districts, and in many cases more, right? You don't see that in Buckhead and in the white areas in Atlanta. So that's one way. Look at the health disparities, right? The difference in health outcomes. Look at COVID. Look what's happening in COVID. All of those differences, all of those discrepancies are reflections of racism, of white supremacy playing out.
According to the Equal Justice Initiative's Lynching in America report, these lynchings were often public spectacles. Large crowds of whites watched and participated in black victims' prolonged torture, mutilation, dismemberment, and burning.
We wanted to assert in a public, it was an act of intimidation.
Okay.
Right? It was a message to the black community: you're next, don't get out of line. And it was also an affirmation of white supremacy, of white superiority, right? So it delivered a message to the white community as well as to the black community.
Schwartz says truth and reconciliation has to start at the community level. He gives more detail about why he founded the organization.
Acknowledging these difficult truths and then taking personal responsibility for injustice. And that's kind of the way I conceived of this organization, that's what we would help people do, right, in local communities. So I really formed it because, first of all, I don't think it's that hard. It shouldn't be that hard to look at this history, acknowledge it, and realize how it continues to affect us, and do something about it, right? and start down that path. So that's one thing. And it's not something that requires an act of Congress. It's not something that requires a commission. I mean, it requires the desire to do it. It's an act of will. And so it's something that's within reach, I think. And it was something that, frankly, that I could do.
Schwartz also emphasizes the importance of acknowledging this history to move forward.
Truth and reconciliation are sequential. And that is to say, you until you know the truth, until you accept and acknowledge the truth, the reconciliation isn't possible. So I think we have a responsibility not only to confront, not only to know about it, to confront it, but to understand how it continues to influence our lives, how it continues to play out. You hear a lot, well, it was someone else that did that. I wasn't around. I didn't do that. Well, that's true. But this is what we have. We have a world that is the product of 400 years of white supremacy and of racism. And it is our responsibility to do something to address the inequities that have and injustices that those 400 years have produced.
The Maryland Lynching Memorial Project has documented over 40 lynchings in the state between 1854 and 1933. And nationwide, over 4,000 Black Americans have been lynched between 1865 and 1950. In Annapolis, Sameena Mathew, The Summit.